It's fun time.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the New York State of Mind podcast. It's your two co-hosts, Danny Kaz, Ben Mana.
What's up, guys? What's going on?
Welcome back to, this is our 12th episode, and we have our newest guest, Mr. Julien McCall over here. And
super excited to have him on. He got recommended to us by our good friend Danny Simon, mutual friend of ours. You guys went to high school together, right?
My guy Danny.
We happened to we went to college with Danny, so appreciate the hookup here, Simon. Don't worry. You'll get on eventually. Calm down. But yeah, we're super excited to have him on. Like we've been saying the past few episodes, we've obviously had our two guests on previously, but we appreciate having them on. Don't worry, boys. We appreciate your time, but those are our two boys that were in our friend group that we grew up with. So now this is kind of our first guest, kind of outside of our own network. That's really, we're excited to have him on because the whole idea behind the podcast is the New York state of mind of people that are hustlers, people that are constantly grinding, have a goal, work toward it, and are constantly trying to better themselves and better what they do. And I'm pretty sure our boy here, Julien, has that in spades with just the quick half-hour conversation we've had with him before we started recording. So super excited to dive into this and get to know him a little better. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here. Just to give more clarity, if you don't know, now you know, in the words of the notorious B.I.G. I'm Julien McCall, a.k.a. King Jules. I am the founder of I don't know what this thing I decided to create is called. I'm just kidding. I'm founder of RoundTable, an independent record label and creative agency. We work with a lot of artists and help with development and kind of really bringing back the true essence of what it means to be a record label in the new music industry.
I like the website.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. She was working pretty hard on it recently.
No, it looks great. Definitely thank you for coming on, Julien. We love your background. Someone from the five boroughs. We got the Brooklyn state of mind over here. And we definitely want our listeners to know more about you and what drives your hustle, what you're trying to, or how you're trying to take your current business from what it is today to the next level. So if you don't mind just giving our audience a little background about yourself, that'd be great.
Okay, definitely. So I would say, I you know what, the music conversation has to start from when I was a baby. So I was born into a musical family. My dad is a musician and producer. He's been making music for over the past, I would say, 40 years. He's been a pretty moderately successful songwriter in his own right and musician. He's had some notable, credits and stuff like that. So that definitely inspired me at a very young age. I think I was I think my mom always says I was born for it, I was 6 months in the womb, really just kicking the shit out of her. She was just, she didn't know what was going on. And then I'm a baby, 6 months old. I'm on the back of tables, banging with pins. That led to me getting my first drum set at 2 years old. That led to me playing drums all the way until I was in high school. And then as, that time developed, I kind of realized that I had a talent for singing. And that's kind of how I ended up at Frank Sinatra with Danny. Got into that vocal program there and kind of really took those 4 years to really hone into my talents and kind of see what was next. Going to college for music was not next for me, honestly, in the plans. I think my first plan was to be a psychologist because I was you ever think about, when your parents are talking about you going to school and, careers and options. Right. They always want you to go for the career to pay the bills, right. And I was practical. Well, what's a career that I could pay the bills with that I won't take me 100 years to get a degree, or is a little bit practical because I like to connect with people. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a psychologist. That was my plan up until my junior year. My senior year, the summer before my senior year, I had spent some time with my dad in the studio. He was working on a couple of projects, and I just realized how much I loved the studio environment. And then also being at Frank Sinatra, I was always the kid that was jumping on all the electrical programs, so doing like AV type stuff and like, you know, stagecraft and stuff like that. That's also another thing that I was in with Danny. This is another plug.
Out of curiosity, what kind of music is your father into?
So my dad is primarily into gospel music. He's done some work in R&B, some film scoring and stuff like that. But his primary background has been in gospel music. And I grew up in the church as well, so that's definitely where the foundation of like my discipline and stuff comes from.
Nice.
So, you know, I guess transitionally, you know, during that time, I was just like, hey, you know what, like, I really felt myself really getting engaged with, you know, like technology and like audio. And I was like, you know what, I want to see if I can pursue audio career. And my senior year, that was kind of like my vested interest. I wanted to pursue a career where I can make music full time, where I can really be submerged in the process. And, I made the choice to go to the College of St. Rose for music industry. It wasn't my first choice. I think my first choice was going to be NYU Steinhardt. But who is paying $80,000 a year in tuition? Not me. Especially not to stay home and like still live in my parents' house.
Right.
No, I'm not doing that.
Don't blame me, bro.
100%. So that kind of just like sparked everything with me going to college, and you know, I think it was just the right place and right time with St. Rose and their program, and I think that I was really invested in it.
Is that a private school?
It is
private school,
yeah.
And you're from the capital region, so
Yeah.
that's pretty much like outside of like UA, that's like the second most notable school in the capital region that everybody knows about.
I would say like UAlbany, St. Rose, and Siena.
Those are like the top three conversationally.
Yep. Did you get any kind of scholarship through high school or anything?
So luckily, you know, I was scared shitless because St. Rose is a private school and is a very expensive school. So I was like, how the fuck am I going to pay this tuition? And my parents, you know, like I'm the oldest of two, so they didn't have a kid that went to college before me, so I was their first kid going to college. So my parents haven't been in college since the 80s, so they don't understand financial aid, they don't understand the application process and the scholarships and all of that. So
it was all on you.
It was all on me. But I took the challenge and I rose to it. I got a lot of, you know, grants and funding through the school, and then the music department gave me a scholarship, and kind of got another scholarship through the music department. So it helped definitely, and it just helped that I was actually really good at music. So like that helped pay for
You had the
school.
talent.
So I had the talent, yeah. So that's kind of where it started, and my freshman year, you know, I was like really just focused on being that shit kid that just wanted to make music and like was really trying to really just like find my place and my identity. And primarily, you know, even though St. Rose is a diverse school in the music program, it really wasn't diverse. I think I was like one of 5 or 6 black kids in my program.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, for me transitionally, we grow up in the city, so we grow up in schools
You got everything.
You got everything, you know what I mean? You've been exposed to that. And imagine being in a place where you're not exposed to that. And I was no stranger to, you know, being the outcast, but it was also felt like very different because you're in a program that's very tight-knit, maybe 20, 30 people in the program, you know, and so like you are the marginalized people in the program. My professors didn't understand what my goal was in hip-hop, my goal was in R&B and music in general, you know what I mean, because I didn't speak their language. So for me, a lot of my journey in college was trying to find my place and find my identity in my music and in my creative process, because my school wasn't necessarily fostering my creative process in the way that I wanted to. And I'm happy that now, like, me and my colleagues that I went to school with, you know, we kind of paved the way for the younger generation where they have a little bit more freedom to, you know, expand them on their, you know, ideas creatively, and the school has a better understanding because, like, we walk through that door so they can follow through.
So was the program at St. Rose relatively new then?
No, it wasn't relatively new. I think the program had been around since the 80s, but it was in a transitional phase where they were kind of really trying to, you know, they were getting some traction. Billboard had recognized them being like one of the top schools to learn the music business in. So that's kind of what gave them extra funding to kind of want to expand.
And is that a new degree within itself? I mean, not brand new, but like music industry. Is that?
I definitely think, that degree area is definitely as recent as the past 10 to 15 years.
My buddy went to SUNY Oneonta for a music industry, I think was the name of his degree.
Yeah, it's definitely a fairly new degree program. Like I said, past 10 to 15 years. I know that, they were laying the bones and the groundwork for the program, a long time ago, but now it's kind of really taken on where you can go to schools to learn what the music industry is, because now we have a better understanding of it. When I've gone on job interviews or when I talk to people about my degree, they're like, "So what is that?" And I gotta sit there.
Not everybody knows.
They don't understand. Yeah. So I have to explain well, this is what my degree is in and stuff like that. And once I explain it, 100% they understand. But conversations like, "Hey, I have a bachelor's in science and music industry," and they're like, "Okay, what does that mean?"
Makes sense. So, I mean, for people that don't know, I don't know too much about. I know Danny went to Frank Sinatra, just Frank Sinatra High School. Is that
it's Frank Sinatra School of the Arts?
Okay, and it's not
here
just
in Long Island City.
I knew it was local. I just didn't know it's not just music though, right? Isn't it all kind of entertainment?
So there's five studios, as we call them, at Frank Sinatra. So there's the music studio, which is the instrumental program and the vocal program. And then there is the art studio, there's the dance studio, and then there's the film and new media studio. So, and then there's also the drama studio. I think Danny was in the drama studio when I came on in the school, and then I was in the vocal studio.
What an actor.
Yeah, what an actor.
Shakespeare. But do a lot of kids that come out of that school, are they geared? Because I mean, the only two people I've ever met from that school are you and Danny is really hasn't pursued that. So that's not his interest really.
I realized that not for everybody, because my fiance and I both went to the same school. Went to school with Danny as well, and not everybody necessarily wants to. Don't get me wrong, my fiance is one of the most talented people that I know, even more talented than I am. But her interest is she said that she wants to teach. That is what she finds her passion in. And I don't think that everybody who goes to that school walks out the door expecting to move forward in, careers in the areas that they studied all 4 years. I know a lot of people who have continued on, especially a lot of people in the music program that have really found their way. Some even people in the drama program. We've had people. I think one of actually Danny's classmates. She was just featured on the episode of Law and Order. There's some people who are definitely making strides, and the same way with my college program. Frank Sinatra's only been around for the past 19 years, so it's a fairly small, fairly young school. So a lot of the graduates, now they're in that age where they're really honing in on their career. So I say give it the next 10 years, you'll hear more conversation about people who went to Frank Sinatra, because obviously, you're going to see more people, really expose themselves to that next level.
So you graduate from high school. You go to St. Rose, get in the program there, and it was not. It sounds like it was a good experience, but it was
it's definitely not what I expected, and I definitely wanted more out of it. But I think that one of my mentors that was there, his name is Marcus Scott, and what he told me was that the program is what you make it, and I really realized that it's whatever you want, even though it's very ambiguous and you can do a lot of things with it. It's whatever you want out of the program, you can get it. And I think my junior year of college is when the music industry department created their own student-run record label. And we all take classes in record label and publishing and copywriting and artist management, all those things. So, it was kind of a good practical understanding of what we learned in class. So we got to say, you're a producer for the record label, and the school record label is going to sign other artists, and they're going to sign, we're going to work with those artists and produce for those artists. And I took on that responsibility as one of the producers for the label. Like I said, they didn't necessarily understand what I was doing creatively at the time. So I'm the only person that's really doing hip hop and I feel like I wasn't really challenged.
But this was like 100% a legit thing. It wasn't just it wasn't just a class project.
100% legitimate record label. Like they built their own record label, publishing company, production company. People worked for the record label just as they will work for a regular day job, regular role responsibilities, because you're putting out quality product. You're actually putting out real music. We're signing artists that are outside of the school. So, it was the same level of like discipline when it came to that. I just felt in that time I wasn't being challenged. And I saw some things that they were doing with their record label that I liked and that I didn't like. And I think the next year, my senior year, me and my friends, my mentor Marcus, he was coming from the West Coast, and this is like the first time he's been back since he graduated. And I was like, yo, like, why don't we do a show, for all of our friends in the area? Like, let's get together, get a couple of our artist homies to just perform with us. We do a show, we all make some cash, come up and see what happens.
Yeah, that was kind of a question I would like. How did it work financially through the school? Like, you could still make money?
So it was a weird way, like, they paid out dividends and you could still make money, but, like, this was, like, the beginning of the streaming age, so it really wasn't full stream Spotify, Apple Music title the way it is in a better management system. It was like we were still kind of putting out physical records and trying to see what happens with that. Obviously, nobody really bought them, but it was still a good learning experience.
But like, the school didn't get in the way of you trying to...
No, because it was a separate entity.
Okay.
And we made it that way. So even though it was through the school, it was still a student-run record label, and that what we did and how we managed things was still controlled by us.
Okay. Was Marcus a professor?
No, Marcus was actually a student.
Oh, okay.
He was just a few years older than me.
Gotcha.
As cliche as it probably sounds, like he was probably the other black kid in the program. So I definitely resonated with him because, we shared in the same commonality.
Right.
But he was definitely a huge mentor, a huge inspiration, and we decided to put on that show. From there, it was pretty much it just felt very organically. It was like we did the show. It just felt right, the artists that we were working with, the sound that we were creating. And I had already had the idea for RoundTable as like a production company with like a few of my friends, like producer friends, and we were just going to put out beats and this is how we would manage things. And after that weekend and really like being submerged in the experience of the show, I said, you know what, like, I think I want to make a record label. I think I want to take this on and really take it seriously and like really help artists. And after working for the student run record label, I really thought about it, and I was like, yo, like, there's some things that artists get taken advantage of and people don't think about and people don't actually care about. And I always reference the point where in like 2009, Rihanna had like about $9 million of her money embezzled from her accountant. Her accountant embezzled all that money from her. And I was like, how is it that an artist works so hard, they build a career, they have all these people around them, but an accountant can take $9 million of your money without no problem? And I was like, that's the problem, because artists are not being educated, they're not being taught, they don't know the business. And it's like, well, this is what the platform is. We're going to create a record label, and this record label is going to be different from every record label in a way where it's not going to be a power head. Even though I'm the founder, I don't control everything. I have a team of people who their decision-making power is the same level as mine. Everybody is equal status. Nobody has more control over the record label than anybody. And I always reference the King Arthur model, where the Knights of the Round Table, like, it was the same model. Even though Arthur was the king, he did not have full control over everything, and he let everybody understand that.
I like that. I like King Arthur. I like that time in history.
Yeah, I do too. It's crazy because people don't necessarily put together, like, my pseudonym is King Jules and the label's RoundTable, but they don't necessarily
link it together.
They don't link it together. And I find that funny sometimes, but that's where it was kind of birthed from, and we decided that we were going to sign some artists and help artists and really like assess their talent, develop them, and guide them in the right direction. And it was never about money. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about like accolades or anything. It was literally about like wholesomely helping artists. That was what our goal is, and not seeing artists being taken advantage of or seeing the same pattern where an MC Hammer can happen, or a Rihanna can happen, or all the many artists have been taking advantage of.
Even like Taylor Swift right now, I might be off on this. I think Taylor Swift can't put out any new music because like Scooter Braun.
Oh, because Scooter Braun.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't fuck with Taylor Swift. But I'm gonna be honest. Like, I mean, but I also think when stuff like that happens, it's all because of the fact that the artist is not invested and fully invested in what they're doing, right? So, you can take Taylor Swift in a Scooter Braun situation. Scooter Braun manages so many people. He manages Justin Bieber. He managed Kanye. He managed a couple of other people too, right? Your job as the manager is to manage and advise the artist. Your job is not to own the artist. But sometimes with artists like Taylor Swift or an artist who's not conscious as to what's going on, they're just like, okay, I want to be the artist and my managers have control. Yeah. And it's like when you sign a management contract, your manager is actually your attorney, in fact. So they can make legal decisions on your behalf. Power of attorney, exactly. Yeah. So with that, she gave him the power to make the decision that he owns.
Right. So herself is to blame.
Exactly. You know, if you don't know your business, you don't know what's going on. You know.
Yeah, that's kind of also like Lil Wayne when he was trying to drop Carter 5.
Yeah.
He had it ready to go for like 4 or 5 years,
and then you don't have control because people own you
because he had beef with Birdman.
Yep.
Yeah, and
I was super tight.
I was confused with that whole thing because people think, or maybe I just thought, and I was confused that he was in charge of his own label. Like
that's what people perceive.
Yeah, or whatever.
Well, yeah, but you know what happens is like all the labels have. All right, so if you think about it, like there's three major labels, and then under those labels are a bunch of sub labels, right? So if you think about the Lil Wayne situation, Cash Money is a subsidiary label to a bigger record label.
Well, so what is it, like Atlantic?
So Atlantic is a subsidiary of Universal. So it's Universal, Warner Music, and Sony.
Those are the three biggest ones.
Three big labels. And then under those labels, you have like smaller labels. So like Universal has like Republic, Atlantic, Def Jam, Island Records. There's a couple other labels. Like Sony has Columbia, RCA. Warner is under Atlantic is under Warner Music Group. I lied, it's not under Universal. But either way, so Cash Money is under one of those big three labels, right? They're not completely independent. And then they gave the power to Lil Wayne to create his own label, which is Young Money. So for the artists that Lil Wayne is signing, like a Drake, who was signed to Young Money, so now Drake has OVO.
So is OVO it's just another branch off the tree?
It's a branch off the tree. So if you look at the tree, look how far
it's come. Yeah.
It's come down the pipeline, and also look how much money is being touched. You know, so the big label gets their money, then Cash Money gets its money, then Young Money gets his money, then OVO gets his money.
That's kind of why like Birdman makes so much money off these like smaller artists.
Exactly, it's because you have so much control over the situation.
Right. And he's just like a bigger portion of the tree, basically. That's wild. He's a billionaire.
Yeah,
is he?
I know he's not. He's
100,
but he has money.
Yeah,
and he's smart. You know, but that's the kind of the pattern that was happening back in the day. It was like people were getting taken advantage of like that. They were signing 360 deals and def contracts to people and labels that like they didn't know exactly what they were doing because they had managers like a Scooter Braun that was like in their ear signed over to Scooter got you this deal, but you might not make any money off of this deal, or you got to give up this, or you can't make any music for this. They have so much control of you, and I think that's also like the big thing that was a part of the inception of RoundTable was like putting the power of control and ownership back in the artist's hands. Like as a record label, the record label is just an investment bank. Like, if you think about it, so they pay you in advance, they pay a $50,000 advance, expecting a return on that advance and doubling sales or whatever the sales expectation is. So when they don't get that, then they have to recoup fees, and then they have to recoup their money some way, somehow. So how do they recoup their money? If you flop, they own your masters. If you do well, they still own your masters. You get a percentage, but then you got to own your publishing, and then you got to have your copyright and all that other stuff. So it's like so many different layers to it, to the game. You know, it's.
I mean, is that why like a lot of the money nowadays is in like touring?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot more artists are independent now, because they seen like, hey, you know what? Those advances don't mean shit now. It's because they're giving you a $50,000 or they normally say a 20% advance. So depending on what the expectation is that you're gonna make off of it in the sales, they're gonna want that money back. But now you see a lot more people taking power, ownership, and control, saying, you know what? I don't need you guys to pay for studio costs and music videos and travel and all these expenses. I could do that myself.
Right, especially nowadays with, I mean, we were talking about this on our last episode, with just how there's so many platforms for you to get your voice heard nowadays. And like you I mean, obviously having a big label like that would help you to get that momentum and that extra push, but you don't necessarily need it because there's Instagram, there's fucking sound, there's everything. You know, YouTube. I'm literally naming
there's so many platforms.
Yeah.
I think, you know, a perfect example of that is Burnt Fayaz. Him, like, his choice to stay independent, because he's been offered record label deals. He's been offered a $250,000 to $300,000 advance to make an album, and he's like, well, I've been making albums without it. I've been touring, I've been going places, I've been doing stuff. Well, I don't necessarily need to give you guys the power of control, you know?
Right.
Even look at Chance the Rapper. Chance the Rapper has always been the biggest formula for independent artists.
Is he still independent?
He's completely independent, you know, and people were confused by that whole Apple Music deal. It was just a deal for it to be released under Apple Music. He was still a completely independent artist.
He wasn't signed under anybody.
Yeah, you don't sign to Apple Music, you know? It's like saying I signed to YouTube. Like, what kind of dumb shit is that?
That's funny you were mentioning that. I don't know if you saw recently, like, Diddy made some kind of Instagram post about, like, how he's going to start taking care of his newer artists better. I'm sure you saw that, right? So, and then you had in the comments one of the first artist he signed. He was like, so what about the people like you screwed over in the past? He was like, I forgot the name of the artist. But
so it's
like,
Mace was talking about it. Mace did like a really big
that's
social media post about it.
$20,000 in 1996.
Yeah,
that's it.
So like, and those are like some of those death contracts you hear about. You know, like you know, it was just music was such a crazy time where people were just really submerged in the experience, where they were saying like, you know, give me $20,000. Imagine $20,000 in 1996. $20,000 in 1996 held a lot of weight.
$60,000.
You know, realistically speaking, $20,000 right in 2020 is water. You know, like it's really nothing. You can go through that in maybe a matter of months, depending on what you're doing. You know, so given that $20,000 in 1996, and you're an artist, and you're, you know, and this is also where I feel like I hate a part of the music industry for it, is that they prey on people who are in impoverished situations, especially in the hip hop industry. You know, they know that this $20,000 might help this artist get out, you know, of the hood, or help them get, you know, make something of themselves. So they see that $20,000 like, yo, this is more money I've ever seen in my life. Whatever I got to do to keep this, I'm gonna do it. And that's probably what Mace did back in '96. Was like, hey, yo, $20,000, I bet I'm taking $20,000. And he even said in the comments that he was like, I was trying to buy back my publishing for you for $2 million, because you know how much residual income that Mace can have been making from '96 up until now.
Right.
You know, all the publishing checks. You know, how often do you hear people play "More Money, More Problems"? That's a record that gets played in the club still to this day. 2020, almost 25 years later, it's still getting crazy record play. So imagine how much money that Mace could have been making off of those records that he put out that really had some acclaimed success. That's all money that's gone, you know? And that's because you signed the power of ownership to somebody else.
And so that whole idea is what kind of gave you the idea.
So that whole idea was kind of what birthed RoundTable. We started out with one artist. His name is Brian J.
Is he still signed to you?
Still signed to this day. Still representing.
I didn't see him on your site. That's all.
Yeah, he took a little hiatus. He's a dad now.
Right on.
Yeah, so you know he's transitioning a little bit. So we're still working with him.
Was he a St. Rose
Yeah, so he was a St. Rose grad. Worked with him because he was definitely like huge on campus. Had a crazy big following.
So he was a rapper.
He was a rapper. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Great artist, great talent. Probably one of the most talented people I've ever worked with. And he really took a chance on me. I was a nobody. I was 21, trying to convince people that I was a record label president, executive, or whatever.
So you were like in school trying to get this rolling.
In school, this is like the fall semester of my senior year.
So you were in school and you had like the one label that was kind of through school, and then that kind of kickstarted you to start thinking about doing it separate.
Yeah. So it was completely separate. At that point, I really stepped away from the school label, and I called up on some of my friends, close friends. That's why you should be good to your friends in college, because you never know what you might need from them. And one of my best friends, Tiffany Lloyd, she's the founder of this platform called Nomadic. At the time that I was birthing RoundTable was the time she was birthing Nomadic, and it was really like we were working in tandem, really trying to build our platform. So her platform is a little bit based on like music media. So any artist releases that were coming out, she was writing for our artists and vice versa, any helping her build content, helping us build at the same time.
So what did she do exactly?
So she runs like a platform, music media platform. She does like playlisting and, artist interviews, and kind of gives you the scope on just like her taste. She has a very crazy taste for music.
Oh, wow.
So she really gives you like her in-depth understanding of like the artist and the music and the experience.
So like blogs, reviews.
Yeah, blog reviews,
like
concerts. Yeah. So,
okay.
That was happening at the same time RoundTable was being birthed. So her, along with another good friend of mine, Alyssa, and then my fiance Allison and Brian, we really were the beginning of RoundTable. And another one, a good friend of mine's, Debbie Day, he's an artist as well. We really were just the beginning, and we were meeting every Monday at a coffee shop, trying to figure out, releases, and we were really working as a label in Albany, and putting on shows. Did you invest
your own money into the label?
At that point in time, I think the only financial investment that I had was like buying T-shirts and like paying for shows. So like paying venues for the shows that we were putting on.
What kind of venues up in Albany were you at?
So we did the Low Beat. We did a couple of campus venues too. And that's actually the show that we did that sparked RoundTable. And another reason behind it was just like, that night, I had like less than $20 in my pocket, and I was not getting paid for like within the next 7 days.
You had like a little side job at school.
I was actually working at Gap, which is my full-time job outside of music. I'm still living my Kanye dream. So I was not getting paid, and I had $20 in my pocket. Realistically speaking, I was just like, when the first show first started, there was maybe 8 people there, and they were all either the artists or artist friends that came through. And I was like, how the fuck are we going to pay the overhead for this venue? And I was like, I have $20 in my name. And, maybe 45 minutes in, me and my friends started looking at each other, and it's like, yo, we're going to have to come up with this money to pay the venue because people are not showing up. And like maybe like 15 minutes later, like the doors started swarming with people. And we ended up making our overhead for the night, and actually came up on money. Yeah. Came up on money, when my friend did the books that night, and he was like, yo, like, I know you came in here, you said you didn't have any money, but I'm telling you, you're going home with more money than you had when you walked through the door. And after that night, I was just like, yo, I could do this. If I could do this with nothing, I could do this with a lot more,
How'd you promote that show? Or how did you promote in the beginning?
So in the beginning, that was Instagram. So that was peak Instagram of like 2015, 2016. So that was an interesting time. That was when like you had a really organic reach, and it wasn't a lot of bots and all the bullshit that they got now.
That was like when you put a hashtag and you really saw
your hashtag. So it was a lot of hashtagging, cold sending messages to people. I like put DMing it in people, DMing people. I was like sending messages to everybody on campus. I was also just going along and just like face-to-face interactions with people. I even like the school had a print center, and I printed like over 100 copies of the flyer, and I went all over my campus. I went over UA campus, the downtown area, buses, walls, plastering flyers on the wall.
How much was the ticket to go to the show?
The ticket, I think it was $8 in advance and like $10 at the door.
Would you say more people bought at the door?
Yeah, always. It's even till this day. If I do a show now, nobody buys tickets in advance. Yeah. Maybe like a few people buy tickets in advance. Most people wait until get to the door to buy the tickets, which is perfectly fine. I make more money at the door anyway.
That's awesome though. Just straight up guerrilla marketing.
Straight up guerrilla marketing, and I didn't know. I wasn't too like. I was pretty savvy on social media at that point in time, but it wasn't to the point where I thought it would garner that traction. So I put my faith in my personal relationships and going out and handing out flyers, and it worked. People came. Yeah.
And that was like your first show as like RoundTable.
First show as RoundTable. I wish I could pull. I wish I could pull up the flyers somewhere in my email, but it was a crazy feeling, and I was like the craziest. I told my fiance that night. I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna start a label. Like, this is the plan. You know."
Like at that point, did you have like a logo? Did you have like your own Instagram page, or were you DMing people from your personal account?
So I was DMing people from my personal account. RoundTable wasn't even an Instagram at that point in time. After that night, I went home, made an Instagram, and one of my best friends from high school, who also went to Frank Sinatra, he was doing some graphic design work for SoundCloud, actually, a post grad, and I was like, "Yo, do me this favor." I was like, "Can you make me a logo for a RoundTable? I was like, this is my record label. This is what I want to do." And I was like, "I want you to make it." And I think the initial logo was actually still inside of my main logo. You probably can't see it from the hat, but the inner working of what the record looks like and on the actual website is the actual main initial first logo. But in the initial first logo, there was a crown in the middle, and I took that out. I sent it to, I had an intern, like this is like post grad, I had a summer intern. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I just graduated college and now I got a record label, I got an intern. And one of my interns, he created the new label, the new logo, with the old logo inside of the record, and kind of really like gave face to the brand that summer after. And that was like when I was about to hit that 1 year mark of RoundTable, and that's when I moved back to the city. Not a lot of money post grad, and still working at Gap. And I was like, okay, so what's next? And I decided to put on my 1 year anniversary show and take that same formula that I did when the first show, brought it to New York City, and it's like, see if this works. And it did work. It was very successful. And
you still, how many artists at that point? Was it still just the
So it was three of us. Okay. It was myself, it was Brian, and it was Debbie Day. Not a big roster. I never really keep a big roster, no more than maybe like 3 or 4 people, because I like to have
right. That's intentional.
A very in organic interaction with people and like connect with people. Like I'm a busy person, so I don't want to not give an artist my time and my energy in the process. So yeah, it was 3 artists right then, and then that was me trying to navigate like, well, what's next? And I think that at that time transitionally, I was a fucking hothead because I thought I was hot shit with a degree. But life will tell you to shut the fuck up and sit you down very quickly.
What year was that? What year did you graduate college?
2016.
2016. Okay, yeah. Gotcha. And then so you did you move back to Queens originally, or?
Yeah, I moved back to Queens.
Okay.
I grew up in Springfield, not too far from like the borderline of Valley Stream, and I was in Queens for that first year. I just moved to Brooklyn. No, I didn't just move to Brooklyn.
We usually cheers for the train.
But cheers for the train?
Beer, yeah.
Alright.
Usually you can't hear shit when we're talking through the train anyway, so we cheers it.
What train is that?
It's Amtrak, actually.
Interesting.
So, yeah. When we moved in, the dude told us, like the realtor was like, yeah, it's a freight train. It only goes by like twice a day. During the day, you'll never hear it. We hear that fucking thing like 3 or 4 times a night.
So did you guys get like lower, right, because of it?
No, I mean, it wasn't the landlord that conned us. It was like the realtor.
Oh,
so
got it.
He's long gone. We don't even see him anymore.
Damn, that's fucked up. Yeah. He was trying to make the sale.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gassing it a little bit. It's not too bad. Like, that's, what time is it? 10:30. we won't hear it past 11:30.
Oh, see, I live right on under the J line, so and like from my window you can literally see the J train, and I'm in between two stations. So like 3:00 in the morning, I'll hear the train crossing, and like it's normal. And the J train comes once every 10 minutes, so it's a little crazy.
Yeah, I'm not even sure like where that goes to, that Amtrak line.
To the city.
No, but like which way is it going now? If it's going that way, it's Long Island going to LAR, Long Island Railroad. I don't know. Fuck that rail theory. So you moved back to Queens, and then how long were you in Queens before you moved to Brooklyn?
I was probably in Queens for a year, 2016 going to 2017. And in that year, I think that was probably the hardest year of my life. I'm trying to figure out, because I knew what I wanted, and I was very gung-ho about what the vision was for RoundTable, but I also wasn't quite there in my personal development in terms of just as, post grad and understanding, my personal goals. Even though I knew what I wanted for RoundTable, I was like not clear as to how I was going to do that. And I took that year to kind of figure it out, to see next steps, and quit the job, had no money, was trying to figure it out, trying to run a label with no money, trying to support artists with no money. Couldn't create for a while. I was like in a minor depression, and then I decided to go back to Gap, and I think that was like my safety net, and I felt comfortable in that. And it did, I'm blessed for the opportunity because it did allow me to really like hone in and learn some new skills and challenge me in a new way, and also help fund kind of what helped plateau, push RoundTable up to the next plateau, which was booking our first residency 2017, collaborating with a bar. I pitched them the idea of saying, hey, once every Saturday night, give me the venue, and I'll bring you a whole bunch of money. Bring in artists, have artists perform. And this is before the oversaturation with see now, like everybody and their moms is hosting like showcases for music and doing shows and stuff like that. This is 2017 where like venues weren't looking to have like that type of thing. Yeah. Where I had to legitimately like pitch it to the venue owner 3 or 4 times because he wasn't getting what I was trying to put down.
Was that just like a place you really you frequented, like a bar you went to a lot? And you were like,
no, I just went there one time for an event my friend was having, and I was like, yo, this is perfect. Like, I think I can do this here, and I was like, let's do it. And that was a fucking ride of my life. Had a great time doing that. Once every month, putting together 8-10 artists to do a show. I was making bank, making good money at that point in time, and I think the money had gotten to my head a little bit because we were doing that I think we did that for a solid like 6 months.
One Saturday.
Saturday a month, but that one Saturday a month took like my time every day, working with different artists, working with different managers, working with the venue,
and it was all like local artists, right?
This is like the local artists in the tri-state area,
and it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't just RoundTable guys, right? Because you said
it wasn't just us. It was like everybody. Yeah. So like I was looking to give other people a platform, whoever that I was looking for. And at first, I was just trying to help like artist friends of mine. And I think that what sparked that whole thing was we had our 2-year anniversary at the venue with the bar, and I had no expectation as to how many people were going to come, the same way that very first show happened. And this is our 2-year anniversary. And when I tell you that it was so crowded in the venue that I could not walk, like me, the person, this is my event,
right?
I couldn't walk through the venue because that's how many people were in the space. I was like,
that's wild.
Was it in the city?
It was in Brooklyn. Okay. It was in Brooklyn. It's a place called Star Bar. And once that happened, I was like, how do I do this every month and convince people to come here every month and do that? And that's kind of what sparked it. And that was a challenge because it was working with my team, really working with other artists and connecting with other artists and building a network. And I think that's where I really honed in on my network of people who I work with now. And that was also a challenge too, because at that point in time, like I said, I was transitioning. So I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought that this is how you get a record label publicity, was helping other artists. But then realizing like I wasn't really operating in full capacity of a record label. I was putting on events, but it wasn't as if the record label was happening. And then I say maybe the past 2 years went by and kind of had some points of development and growth and artists changing and stuff like that. And I think 2019 provided a lot of clarity into what exactly is the future of RoundTable and like working with artists and development and kind of birthing the RoundTable as an independent label and birthing the RoundTable creative and just agency as well. Kind of putting those things together and creating a bigger entity, because at one point I think I want to be like a Rock Nation or, you know, a Bad Boy, you know, that entity that expands beyond the music industry, because the music industry is great and has its leaps and bounds, but, you know, after a certain point you die out. You can't sustain yourself forever, you know, and you got to have a backup plan.
Sure, yeah, you got to diversify.
Yeah.
What so when you say like the creative side of like the label and agency, like what do you mean by that? Are you guys like kind of just doing your like working on your own, like you do your own
so RoundTable Records is more like an artist development hub, where we help just, you know, guide you through the inception process of the songwriting to production to mixing and mastering to the distribution. So really honing in on artist development. I really thrive on artist development. I think it's a lost art that we need to work on, and the industry needs to bring back, because there's so many artists out now who are so trash that should have went through artist development, and maybe they would be better now because of it. But, you know, that's what we do on the record label side. And it's not your typical, you know, 360 record label situation, which I enjoy. And then the creative agency is, you know, something that I've always had a passion for, is, you know, helping with digital marketing and media and assisting with, you know, all the creative aspects.
Like the graphic design.
Creative direction for videos and, you know, album treatments and stuff like that. The full creative process and understanding the scope of that.
And you guys do all that kind of stuff, like in-house, like videos and stuff?
All in-house.
And is it kind of like you run it? Like who's holding the camera? Like that?
No. So it all depends on just the project and the process.
Sure.
I'm very hands-on in the process. I'm a jack of all trades, so I can pretty much do everything. But I can't always do everything. So it depends on the project. You know, we outsource to contractors and give other people opportunities and stuff like that. Yeah. But the direction comes from in-house with the team.
And
so at the end of the day, you know, we're entrepreneurs and businesses always have to make money. What would you say is RoundTable's number one source of revenue?
Number one source of revenue, it is completely changed. I thought if this was 2018, I would say our number one source of revenue would be from hosting events. But right now, our number one source of revenue is through management and booking. Booking artists and collaborating with, you know, artists as artist managers. That's kind of where the revenue is coming from right now.
Nice. And who would you say is... Do you have like one artist that is specifically bringing the most revenue to the company, or?
I think everybody, you know, is bringing their fair share. I think the artist that's more seasoned and developed definitely has to be Sonny Picasso. We've been working with him for a very long time. I think that the person that's about to bring a whole bunch of revenue is going to be Shadi up next. We've been working with him a lot recently. We recently signed with him within the last week, actually. So we got some big plans for him. So, but I don't think about it in terms of just our work as a record label as, you know, what the financial means is, because if you think about it like that, you're not gonna be successful, especially because the money's not in the record label. The money is in the businesses that outside of the record label. You know, the creative agency brings in a lot of money. You know, working and booking, working with creating event production and stuff like that. That's the stuff that makes money. But the process of thinking like, hey, you know, what does the revenue look like? It changes, you know, and that's what the beauty of it having, you know, two separate entities under one company. It's like the revenue comes from pretty much everywhere. So
right.
And you said like, what you started this to be, you know, kind of everyone has their fair say, and everyone is kind of incorporated in the decision making.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's still
very true.
Obviously, you're the head.
Today.
But do you have like a
I don't even like acknowledging that I'm the head. I think that for like business purposes, when people ask, "Oh, well, like who's the person, or who owns it, who runs it?" Obviously, I think it's just I'm the quarterback, or actually, I'm the head coach. I'm the one that I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm the support. You guys are really the all-stars. I'm the baseball manager. You ever notice baseball managers don't talk unless they're really pissed off?
Yep.
They're just in the background. They're very calm, but everything is moving and working just fine.
Right.
And when the time is right and it's necessary, they'll go up and say something. That's just how I am. That's how I am with the team. Everybody has equal opinions. It's not a one-man show. Because if you have a one-man show, you're not going to be successful. You need people, you need support, you need backing to be successful, honestly.
Nice.
I like that analogy. You're in the dugout, you're watching everything.
Yeah, I have the straight face and I'm spitting out the seeds, but you know that I mean business.
You're giving a few signs, but then if something were to go down, you'll hop out.
Yeah, and then I'll kick a little dirt.
So also how everything in your industry is also about like what kind of audience and viewers you're getting. Which platform would you say is showing you the most love?
I definitely say Spotify has been showing us the most love. That's kind of where we've been, getting the bulk of our listenership, and I think a lot more people are transitioning to Spotify. People hate Apple Music recently because they just haven't been as reliable as a platform. And then, for some people, Tidal's a little bit expensive. But, the person who is on Tidal is more like a very keen, detailed listener. They appreciate high quality audio. They appreciate how they intake music. And then Spotify, you can get your regular Joe Schmo. You can be like the guy who works at McDonald's to your regular executive. You know what I mean? The scope of people who use Spotify is very wide. So that's kind of the platform that we cater to. But in this industry, you can't necessarily cater to one platform because there's so many different levels. And I definitely learned that working with Shadi. I put out releases before, but my understanding is a little bit better. With him, I kind of feel like 5 years in the game, I'm finally breaking the mold on, I would say the formula of success in the music industry. And I haven't even reached that success, but now I fully understand the formula and how it works and kind of like it's going in the right direction. So with the platforms, it's saying, hey, you know what? That might be the platform that works for us right now, but you have to cater to everybody because you might not know. The VP of Def Jam might be listening on Apple Music or at Tidal. You never know who's listening, how they're listening to, and the way that there's so many platforms now, you have to be accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Like one Google search should point you to everything everybody needs to know about you. The SoundCloud, the Instagram, the YouTube, the Twitter, the Spotify, the Tidal, the whatever platform it may be. Like they want to have that accessibility to you. So
nowadays, you just have to be everywhere because there's so many places to be and so many places for people to look. You have to be accessible and visible in all.
And if you're not visible, people look at you like, are you okay? Like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Why aren't you visible?
The less things you're on, the more legitimate you look. It's that's just the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was always wondering how some up and coming artists, maybe they would release an EP or just a smaller album, and I would go on like Apple Music and they would say like, "Oh, this is hot." You know what I mean? So like, how do people like that just come out of nowhere? Does that happen often?
It depends. It depends on backing. It depends on what it is. So a lot of times,
put money into the platform, like it's kind of like
the way that you can go about it is meeting with the platform, and I think a lot of artists do this is that they set up time with the different platforms to play the platform their music and see how can the platform properly distribute the music to the consumer. So you ever see the videos or the Instagram pictures of your favorite artists like in the SoundCloud background or YouTube background or the Rock Nation background? They're going to these places and they're playing them the records and for executives and people who work in the front offices and seeing like, hey, do you like my music? And if you like my music, well, I want to distribute with you guys and see how can I distribute with you guys and get the maximum potential out of everything. it depends on also who the label backing is. You know, if you're working in tandem with a larger label, you know, one of the big threes, they have way more budgets. They have way more pull to kind of push you in that direction. You know,
it's who you know, basically.
It's all about who you know. But that's life. That's business. You know, it's not about what you know. It's who you know. It's who's in your network and how can you consciously use your network to your benefit. You know.
Yeah. Do you speak with any people from the big three?
Definitely have a lot of friends that work in the big three. Got some friends at Universal, got some friends at Warner, got some friends at Sony.
And you just kind of met them from like doing what you do?
Just transitionally, even the points before, you know, I was doing this, you know, some of my friends, they ended up working, you know, at big record labels, you know,
like friends from high school,
friends from college, people who I just knew from all walks of life, and even just people who I've met from, you know, the shows, the RoundTable shows and networking and like the artists that they work with or might represent, you know, that's how we connect with people, you know. So I have a lot of friends and resources in big places, and, you know, I haven't really tapped into those areas, not necessarily that I couldn't, but because I really want to learn and get that full experience on my own to say, you know, when the time is right, hey, maybe I can pitch to a big record label and stuff like that. But for right now, I definitely want to, you know, continue to grow. Like they say, well, it takes 10,000 hours to master something. So if I start a RoundTable 5 years ago, I'm not going to be fully ready to master RoundTable until I'm 29, almost 30, right? Yeah. So I think about it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting and cool though when you do run like the same circles in the same like industry. You're going to brush up against people that you and expand your network just like that, which is like this. That's kind of what I want to do with the podcast and to grow and expand is get guests on to expand our own sphere of influence.
Definitely.
And like I didn't even before you coming down here, I didn't even know you had a podcast.
Yeah.
So
you never know.
And meeting people like that and expanding your audience and your reach and your friends. At the end of the day, the people like you guys were just saying, like it's all about who you know and the influence that can bring.
You can get you in more rooms by saying, "Hey, like, yo, Ben, that's my boy." You know, right. Oh, okay, all right, so you get the job, or well, let's get you on because you know this person. You know, I've seen it happen so many times before, and that's kind of where you have, you know, your social capital. That's super important, and knowing the level of your social capital, because you might have 1,600 followers on Instagram, but you have way more social capital than your Instagram numbers portray. Yeah. You know, you might have,
or vice versa.
You know, you might have 60,000 followers, but you have no social capital, and somebody who has, you know, that 1,600 might have more. It's kind of just the way that it falls. You know.
I know we were talking about it before we hopped on this, but if you want to talk a little bit more about your podcast, and is that through, does that have anything to do with RoundTable?
So initially, RoundTable was trying to, we just launched a platform that we called Table Talk Radio, and it was kind of inception.
Love that, by the way. That's cool.
And within the first two and a half years, but we transitioned out of it because we weren't really giving Table Talk Radio the energy and time that we necessarily needed to. Okay. And it's definitely something that we're going to revisit later down the line, but for right now it's kind of just like the podcast is a separate entity, and I think we've been working in collaboration with Anchor .fm more recently with the podcast, so it's kind of awarded us the opportunity to see that grow. But we started the podcast September 2017. So kind of around the same time we started the RoundTable residency, my partner Kevin and I, we really started the podcast. And the podcast was initially just us talking about our tips of success to being successful. And we were just talking about the moderate success that we had with the residency, and talking about recapping every month and the lessons that we learned and dealing with people, and, you know, giving, you know, helpful tips for that entrepreneur on the come up. And that's kind of birthed us to where we are now, 3 years down the line, 3 seasons in, and kind of seeing, you know, what opportunities kind of lead from that.
Yeah, that's dope, dude. I mean, having you on is I think this is my favorite episode to date. Not just saying that because you're here, man.
Well, thanks.
Just really getting to hear and get some, you know, feedback from someone that's done the podcast thing for a little while, and the tips you were giving us beforehand, which was super
I love
appreciated.
it. Podcasting is the future. They project that podcasting is going to be $1.2 billion industry within the next 5 to 10 years, so I give kudos to anybody who realizes that the opportunity, for podcasts, because you guys are going to be the ones that are really going to take and eat from the bread and butter of what the next few years is going to offer.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a time now where like your voice has never been more like accessible, and the ability to be heard has never been greater.
Yeah.
And so if you have something to say, and the confidence to say it, and you think what you're saying has some substance, go for it.
100%.
And if people like what you have to say, awesome. They'll
listen. Listen to it,
and
then they'll get mad when you don't post episodes.
Yeah, and if they don't, fuck off. I mean, there's other stuff out there to listen to.
Definitely.
Do you still have the residency going on, or
so we actually ended the residency. When did we end it? When was the last residency? I think it was probably summer of 2018. Probably like around April or May of 2019. No, I lied. January of 2019 was when we ended the residency, and we had our last residency.
Little over a year ago.
Little over a year ago. And I think the main reason why we ended the residency was because it was the landscape of just how events was happening in the city were changing, and the venue were changing their policies and what their expectation was financially, and it wasn't mutually beneficial. And once I've always been fair when it came to business in terms of just working with other venues and stuff like that. And this is not the only venue we work with, but, I thought that, we had good relationship, had been working with them for over 3 years. So, when we kind of stepped out of that lane and kind of wasn't as positive as I thought it was, and kind of just said, it's time to end it. And we ended on a very, very, very beautiful note. And I still support Star Bar and their efforts till this day. But, it was just time for us to grow. And I think that, it led us to other opportunities, bigger spaces, kind of more accessible spaces for artists, and kind of give artists other platforms. And we moved the Come Up series, which was which is the name that the residency took on.
The Come Up series?
The Come Up series.
Nice, I like that.
We took that Come Up series and moved it to, different venues across the city to see, how can we give that platform. And it really challenged us to really think about the scope bigger than just the city, to say like, hey, can we bring the Come Up series to other major cities across America? And that's something that we're working on definitely in 2020 to bring the Come Up series, to really find those grassroots, raw artists and give them their first platform. Because for some of the artists that we worked with on the residency, like the residency was their first platform. It was the first time they performed by themselves, or first time that they've had a platform that was bigger than just a few family or friends for them to create and to share their music on. So
yeah, hopefully we can attend your next show.
That was gonna be my next thing. Is what's the next thing coming up you have, or is there something on the books?
So we don't have anything on the books right now for the Come Up series, because we just been really working hard with putting out Shadi's new music. I think we're working on maybe doing a release party for him sometime in the next month or so. But no plans on the immediate horizon for the Come Up series. I think right now our focus is just the music, like really just honing in on the music, taking a step back. And that's another reason why we took a step back from the residencies, because we weren't really spending time on honing in on the music and the artist development, because like I said, the show takes up one show for that month. The work and planning and everything in the background takes so much time. It was like, hey, when are we going to have time for the music? When are we going to have time for the artists? So, so that's kind of something we're focusing on more now.
So you plan on getting basically more studio time this year?
Yeah, definitely more studio time, work on releases, work on music, sharing more music. It's because how can you go out and do shows and host events? Like, you want to put your artists out there and share music. That's what we're here for. I guess touring and shows make us money, but you can't go on the tour and show without music for people to listen to.
You need the substance, you need the content.
Definitely.
Just a side note, how long have you been engaged?
I've been engaged, it would be a year come March.
Right on. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And you met her in high school.
High school,
right?
sweetheart.
Hey, very nice.
Have a date for the wedding.
We actually just recently we have a date in mind. Hopefully everything goes through. But we have a working date that we're working towards. So it's kind of like where we are.
Nice. Must be very exciting.
It's very exciting, very scary at the same time because who knew wedding planning was this crazy? I did not know before I proposed, and after I proposed, I was like, "What the hell did I get myself into?"
It's real.
It's real. Like it's such a big business and all the crazy things that go in behind it. You know, it's very crazy.
Wedding planners make nice money.
Watch your pockets.
Yeah, I'm about to switch my industry. Wedding planning might be it.
Wedding planner label.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting a little late, man. We'll let you get out of here. We really do appreciate your time.
It's been my pleasure. You know, I definitely thank you guys for giving me the outlet to speak and share some of my knowledge and talk my shit for a little bit.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
It was really educational. I was.
You opened my eyes.
Yeah, I hope our listeners were half as enticed and interested as I was when I was listening.
You have a great story. Yeah, definitely wishing you lots.
Yeah,
of
when I get hopefully when they do my behind the music series, they cast it right and they do the story right.
But yeah, we're super hyped to have you on here, man, because you definitely exemplify all the characteristics that we set out to like portray to people in what a New York state of mind is. You have the hustle, the ambition, the drive, and it seems like you put your head down and just work,
that's it.
Which is like a lot of people our age and our generation today don't necessarily do that. Not
They're
shitting
scared
on,
to work.
Yeah, not shitting on our generation entirely.
I mean, we created this platform where you could create a Facebook idea and you don't have to work. You know, and like just live off of that.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like a lot of people today have excuses and will just kind of give themselves an easy outlet to come up with an excuse or why the universe isn't working. You know, they think there's some
big force
that's preventing them from getting somewhere, when that's horseshit. Doesn't exist. You just got to work hard and have set a goal for yourself and just put your head down until you get there, and which you definitely exemplify in the highest regard, my man. So appreciate you coming on.
Definitely check out our boy Julien McCall, RoundTable Records. His website is weareroundtable.com.
And you can find us on socials at We Are Roundtable across the board.
We'll give you a shout out on.
Yeah, we'll definitely tag it all up when we post this out. But yeah, you're welcome back anytime, man. Please.
Thank you. We definitely got to get you guys on Mogul Talk.
Definitely
an episode coming soon.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming through. To anybody listening, check out our boy. Lots of love through the audience, and hit us on our DMs or any type of messaging, and let us know what you think of the episode.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
Later.
It's fun time.